I felt something awaken within me, a spark I thought had long faded, something I couldn't ignore. My hand tightened around Mia's, and my mind spiraled with emotions. "What do we do?" I asked, desperation lacing my voice. She opened her eyes, a blend of sadness and longing reflected back at me. "I don't know," she admitted softly. "But I can't pretend this isn't happening. We need to be careful, Alex. We can't let this hurt David. I don't want to destroy everything." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to hurt you, either. But I can't deny how I feel." Mia leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should take some time to figure out what this means. See if it's real or just confusion." "Yeah," I agreed, my heart aching. "Maybe that's a good idea." We sat in silence for what felt like hours, our hands still clasped together, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. I knew that whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. We had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. Mia stood, her hand slipping from mine. "We should get some sleep," she said softly. "We'll talk more tomorrow." "Okay," I replied, my voice thick with emotion as she turned to leave, pausing at the door to glance back at me. "Good night, Alex," she said, her voice filled with a sadness that echoed in my heart. "Good night, Mia," I whispered, watching her close the door behind her. In the darkness of my room, I sat, my mind racing, my heart heavy. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: my life was about to change in ways I couldn't begin to fathom. And as much as that terrified me, a part of me was eager to see where this new path would lead. The silence was deafening after Mia left. A swirl of guilt, confusion, and an irresistible pull towards something that felt so wrong washed over me. I couldn't shake the memory of her touch, the softness in her eyes when she looked at me. I knew I should feel angry at myself for even considering this, but I wasn't. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I joined Mia and my dad for breakfast, exchanging small talk about the weather and my job search. David was in high spirits, chatting about his weekend plans, blissfully unaware of the tension crackling between Mia and me. Stealing a glance at her, I saw calmness in her smile, but her eyes were full of unsaid words, reflecting our shared secret. After breakfast, David left to run errands, leaving Mia and me alone in the house. I pretended to look for jobs online, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her touch, her laughter. A knock at my door interrupted my reverie. I knew who it was before I even answered. "Come in," I called, my voice sounding far too eager. Mia stepped inside and closed the door behind her, her expression serious. "Alex, we need to talk." I nodded, my heart racing. "I've been thinking about it all morning." She sat on the edge of my bed, her brow furrowed. "I'm confused. I feel guilty, but I can't stop thinking about you." Relief washed over me. At least I wasn't the only one feeling this way. "I feel the same," I admitted. "I know it's wrong, Mia, you're my stepmom, and David doesn't deserve this. But when I'm with you, it feels right. There's something between us." She met my gaze, a mix of sadness and longing in her eyes. "I know. But I don't want to hurt David. He's a good man and has been wonderful to me. I don't want to betray him. Yet, I can't ignore how I feel." I moved closer, sitting beside her on the bed. "I don't want to hurt anyone either, but we have to figure out what this means for us." Mia looked down, her fingers fidgeting with her dress. "I don't know what the future holds. Is this just a phase? But I care about you more than I should, and I can't pretend otherwise." I took her hand, feeling the warmth radiate from her touch. "Let's take it one step at a time. We don't need to figure everything out right now. Let's just see where this goes, be honest with each other, and take it slow. We owe it to David and to ourselves." She searched my eyes, uncertainty flickering across her face. "Do you really think we can keep this from him?" I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. "We'll have to, at least until we understand what this is. I can't ignore this, but I don't want to cause pain either." A small smile tugged at her lips as she squeezed my hand. "Okay, Alex. We'll take it slow and see where it leads. But we have to be careful. If David ever found out." "I'll be careful, I promise," I assured her. In the following weeks, Mia and I cautiously navigated our feelings, spending time together late into the night after David had gone to bed. We strolled through the park, lost in conversations that ranged from the mundane to the deeply personal, all the while the tension between us simmered just below the surface. We hadn't crossed any more lines, but every glance, every fleeting touch felt like a step closer to something profound. One evening, After one of our long walks, we settled in the backyard, gazing at the stars. David was out with friends, giving us a rare moment of privacy. Our conversation grew deeper, more intimate. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" I asked quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. Mia turned to me, her eyes sparkling in the starlight. "What do you mean?" "If things had been different, if you hadn't married my dad, do you think we would have?" She smiled softly, a hint of wistfulness in her expression. "Life is full of what-ifs. But right now, in this moment, I'm here with you, and that's what matters." Reaching out, I took her hand, feeling a rush of warmth. "I'm glad you're here, Mia. I don't know what I'd do without you." "I'm here, Alex, and I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. As we sat under the stars, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. It wouldn't be easy, challenges, doubts, and possibly regrets awaited us. But for now, we had each other, and that felt like enough. In the weeks that followed, we continued to explore our connection, carefully maintaining our secret. It was a delicate balance, requiring constant vigilance and honesty. Then, one fateful Saturday afternoon, everything changed. David returned unexpectedly, his face flushed and his eyes filled with fury. He had forgotten his golf clubs and stormed in, catching us in a moment of intimacy. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. Mia and I leapt to our feet, guilt plastered across our faces. "David, it's not what it looks like," Mia began, but he wouldn't listen. "How long has this been going on?" he shouted, his eyes ablaze. "Please, just let us explain," I pleaded, my heart racing. But he turned on his heel, rage propelling him out the door, slamming it behind him. Mia and I stood there, stunned. The secret we had fought to protect was shattered, and I felt the weight of betrayal crash down around us. We had crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed, and the fallout would be devastating for all of us. In the days that followed, the house brimmed with tension. David barely spoke to either of us, his hurt and anger palpable. Mia tried to reach out to him, to explain, but he refused to hear her words. I could see the pain etched on his face, the betrayal twisting like a knife, and it tore me apart to know I was the cause. Eventually, I realized I had to make a choice. I couldn't stay in a house suffocated by tension, anger, and heartbreak. I packed my bags and told David the first was leaving. He didn't say much, just nodded, his eyes hardening. Mia looked devastated but didn't try to stop me. She understood this was for the best. As I stepped out the door, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew I couldn't stay. I needed to carve my own path, to discover who I was and what I truly wanted. Though I cared for Mia deeply, I realized our relationship had been built on a shaky foundation of secrets and lies. It wasn't fair to David, and it wasn't fair to us. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it head-on. Life was messy and complicated, filled with unexpected twists, but it was also beautiful, and I was eager to embrace whatever came next. I felt an awakening within me, a spark I thought was lost forever, something I couldn't dismiss. My fingers intertwined with hers, my mind racing with a swirl of emotions. "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling both lost and desperate for clarity. She met my gaze, her eyes reflecting a blend of sadness and longing. "I don't know," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't keep pretending this isn't happening. We need to be careful, Max. We can't let this hurt your father or destroy everything we've built." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "I don't want to hurt him or you. But I can't ignore what I feel." As she leaned closer, I felt the heat of her breath on my skin. "Maybe we should take some time to figure this out. See if it's real or just a fleeting moment." "Yeah, that sounds right," I replied, my heart aching with the weight of our situation. We had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. Linda stood up, her hand slipping from mine. "We should get some rest," she said softly, glancing back at me. "Let's talk more tomorrow." "Okay," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. As she closed the door behind her, I sat in the dark, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. My life was on the brink of change in ways I couldn't even begin to fathom. The silence in my room was overwhelming after she left. Guilt and confusion battled within me, yet I felt an irresistible pull towards something that felt both wrong and tantalizing. The memory of her touch lingered, a reminder of the connection we shared. I knew I should be angry at myself for even considering this, but instead, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. The next morning, I tried to act normal. At breakfast, I joined Linda and my dad. making light conversation about the weather and my job search. My father was in high spirits, oblivious to the tension between Linda and me. Stealing a glance at her, I noticed her smile was bright, but the flicker of anxiety in her eyes betrayed her thoughts. After breakfast, my dad left for errands, leaving Linda and me alone. I sat in my room, pretending to search for jobs online, but my mind was elsewhere. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I knew who it was before I answered. "Come in," I called, my voice betraying eagerness. Linda stepped inside, closing the door with purpose. "Max, we need to talk." "I've been thinking about it all morning," I admitted, my heart racing. She sat on the edge of my bed, her expression serious. "I've been thinking too," she confessed. "I'm so confused. Part of me feels guilty, but another part can't stop thinking about you." Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone in this. "I feel the same way," I admitted. "I know it's wrong. You are my stepmom and dad. He doesn't deserve this. But when I'm near you, I can't help it. There's something between us, something real." Her eyes searched mine, filled with a blend of emotions. "I do care about you, Max. But I don't want to hurt Tom. He's been good to me. I can't betray him, but I can't ignore what's happening between us either." I shifted closer, sitting beside her on the bed. "I don't want to hurt anyone either, but we have to figure out what this means. For us." Her gaze softened. "I don't know what the future holds, if this is a phase or something more. But I care about you more than I should, and I can't pretend it isn't there." I reached out, taking her hand again. This time, she didn't pull away. "Let's take it one step at a time," I suggested. "We don't need to have all the answers now. Let's see where this leads. Be honest with each other, and take it slow. We owe it to Dad and ourselves." "Do you really think we can keep this from him?" she asked, doubt flickering in her eyes. "We'll have to, at least until we understand it better," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I won't let this cause pain for anyone." A small smile broke through her uncertainty. "Okay, Max. We'll take it slow and see where this goes. But we have to be careful. If your dad ever found out." "I promise, I'll be careful," I assured her. Over the next few weeks, Linda and I tiptoed around our new reality. Late-night conversations and long walks became our secret escape. The tension was always there, an electric current beneath every word and gesture. We hadn't crossed any more boundaries, but each fleeting touch felt like a step towards something we both knew could alter everything. One evening, after a particularly lovely walk, we settled in the backyard under a blanket of stars. My dad was out with friends, granting us a rare moment of solitude. As we spoke about life, dreams, and the paths we'd chosen, the atmosphere shifted to something more personal. "Do you ever wonder what might have been?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me, the starlight illuminating her face. "What do you mean?" "If you hadn't married my dad, do you think we would have?" A sad smile crossed her lips. "Life is full of what-ifs. But right now, in this moment, I'm here with you, and that's all that matters." "I'm glad you're here, Linda," I replied, my heart full. "I don't know what I would do without you." "I'm here, Max, and I'm not going anywhere." Sitting together, the weight of our situation hung in the air, but the connection felt unbreakable. We knew challenges awaited us, but for now, we had each other. As the weeks passed, we carefully explored our feelings, managing the delicate balance of secrecy. Yet, one Saturday afternoon, everything shifted. My dad returned unexpectedly, his face flushed with anger. He had forgotten his golf clubs and stormed in to find Linda and me seated too close together, hands nearly touching. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice trembling with rage. We stood up, guilt flooding our expressions. "Tom, it's not what it looks like," Linda started, but my dad wouldn't listen. "How long has this been going on?" he shouted, his eyes filled with betrayal. "Please, Dad, let us explain," I pleaded, but he was already storming out, the door slamming shut behind him. The weight of reality crashed down. Our secret was exposed, and there was no going back. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house thickened with tension. My dad barely spoke, his hurt palpable. Linda attempted to reach out, but he refused to engage. I felt torn, knowing I was responsible for the rift growing between them. Eventually, I knew I had to make a choice. I couldn't remain in this suffocating environment. "I'm leaving," I told my dad one evening, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He nodded, eyes hard with unspoken pain. Linda looked devastated, but she didn't try to stop me. You know it's for the best, she whispered. As I walked out the door, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I didn't know what awaited me, but I was ready to embrace my journey. I'd carry the lessons learned and the feelings shared as I stepped into the unknown. Life was messy, complicated, and unpredictable, but it was also breathtakingly beautiful. I was ready to see where my path would lead.